So macrame is really popular as a technique right now, and it's very simple techniques of knots, lots of different ways that you can do some knots. So what I quite wanted to show you tonight was how to do a little macrame feather. These are really, really cute, and you can use them with lots of simple materials that you might have at home. Primarily, what you need is any kind of cord or string that you can unravel the threads to produce a kind of fluffy fabric. So see if I sort of untwist this string. This string is made up out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 or 9 separate strands of threads, and it's all spun together to make a kind of thick piece of string. So we're going to knot it all up thick, and then we're going to spread out all these little separate cords, and that creates this nice sort of fluffy effect, and it makes it lovely and soft. So you can use other yarn as well. I'm going to give this yarn a try tonight, because the test is really just to see whether or not the strands, whether there's a lot of them and whether they come apart quite easily. So I'm going to do a wee small feather. This one's a wee small one too, and the idea is that we're going to use, I've already upcycled a jar with some knitting, and I'm going to actually embellish, do a little bit of embellishment on the jar with adding the feathers, which will make it look a bit more attractive. And it's going to look a bit sort of boho. If you've got wooden beads, these are good to add on as well. So jute string is really nice, just natural string is good. This type of yarn is also very good. So again, you can find some of these items at home. Right, so I'm going to use the blue for now. And to get a fairly small feather to start off with, you need a long length of your wool, about 40 centimetres. So I've got my rule stick in front of me there, and that's about 40 centimetres. So we're going to use this, and this is going to be the stem of the feather. So we're going to double that, and we're going to just lay it down in front of us like this, because this is going to be the backbone of the feather. Now what I want you to do is just cut lots and lots of 20 centimetre. So using my yardstick, my metre stick again, that's 20 centimetres there. So cut lots of 20 centimetres, probably going to need, I think, about 30. Okay, so cut 30. So now we've got all our strands, we're now going to position them for our feather. So it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be exactly 20, just roughly 20. 20 is a good size to use for your fingers. Any smaller than that, and then it gets a bit more difficult. Okay, so what I want you to do then is, again, you're always halving your lengths, and then we're going to put the first half underneath the stem of the feather, but we're going to leave a gap at the top and then work our way towards the bottom. Now you get quite a nice effect if you place this first cord in alternate fashion. So for the top one, my loop is on the left hand side, my tails are on the right hand side as it's facing me, and then opposite for the one below. Okay, so you don't really have to do this, but it just gives you a nice effect as you go down through your macrame. And I always find that it's good to put two in position, and then when we finish off this first one, then we'll put another one in position, so that you don't forget which side you've started on first. Like I say, it's not imperative that you have these alternates, but I'll show you the effect that it gives once we get started. Okay, so to place your first macrame knot, what you're going to do is we're going to go for this first one first. And we're going to take the first strand, and we're going to have the fold in the opposite corner, or the opposite side of from this one. Okay, so Okay, so you're sort of placing this yarn on top of this one in this position. Your fold is on top of your tails and your tails are on top of your fold. So what you're basically doing is, through the loop, you're grabbing those tails and then you're pushing those tails through this loop. Okay, and then you grab the tails and you pull up really tight. Okay, so very tight, pull that up very tight. Okay, and then push that down again. And then I'm going to put that up a tiny bit. So this is my second strand. So before I start to do my second strand, I'm going to get my third strand ready so that I know that, you know, my loops at that side, my loops at this side. It just gives your knots a more alternating effect on the stem. Okay, so the second strand I'm going to place on top of my second strand that's already behind the stem. I've got my fold here and my tails on the right here. So I'm going to put my fingers through my fold and I'm going to grab those tails and draw them up. Okay, and then I'm going to take those tails and push them down through that fold, and then I'm going to pull the whole thing up into a tight knot. Okay, and then push that up beside the other one. Okay, it does help if your stem stays straight. Give it a nice tight pull. All right, then I'm going to get my other one ready. So again, I'm alternating. My fold is on the left, my fold is on the right. Then I'm going to get my next strands ready to do my third macrame knot, and my fold is opposite, and I'm going to put my fingers through the fold and I'm going to grab the tails and then just pull that through, and then I'm going to take these tails and push them down through that loop so they're coming underneath, and then I'm going to pull it up. It's almost like a figure of 8. Okay, so pull that up really tight. I'm also going to alert you to a diagram that shows you how to do this as well, because sometimes the visual that you can refer to is really helpful for this type of thing. Okay, so I want you to keep going doing this until all of your strands are all tied up. Okay, so we'll do it one more time. So this is my fourth one, and my fold here is on the left above my tails. This one's on the right. I'm going to grab my tails through the loop, place that over the loop, and then those tails are going to go through that loop like that. So, and then I'm going to pull it all up really tight, and then I'm going to push it up. Okay, so carry on until all your tails are used up. Okay, so this is the last one. You can do as many strands as you want. You can create different shapes of feather as well, just depending on what we cut. Okay, so this is what we've got left. Just give your wee stem a tug just to make sure that it's nice and straight in the middle. And hopefully if you've been tying nice and tightly all the way along, all your knots are nice and tight. You can give them another wee pull if you want to. Okay, so if you hold it up, you can start to see that you've got a kind of the makings of a feather shape. Now the next part is not actually that exact. What you want to do is fan out your sides, and you're going to cut it in a kind of if I use a knitting needle, you're almost cutting it in a kind of diagonal shape like this, with narrow at the bottom and longer at the top, like that. So it is useful to use something as a guide, and I'm going to actually use this magazine here because I'm going to use this in a minute anyway. Okay, so I'm going to use this, or if you've got a ruler, yeah, actually we'll use my ruler. It's a meter stick, so it's a wee bit big. So maybe if you've got a smaller ruler, it would be handy. So I'm going to just hold it in position in a kind of diagonal like that, so that I've got a fairly narrow bit down the bottom and much wider at the top. So a kind of butterfly shape like that. You can always trim it. Okay, so I'm going to cut up here based on my ruler. And these scissors are not very good. Oh, they ones are even worse. Okay. Okay, so again, we're going to be able to trim this, but this is just to give you the sort of shape. So if we push that down, that's going to fall a bit better into shape. We can still, you know, obviously we can still trim it if we feel it's too big or it's too long, then we can do that. Okay, so I'm going to roughly put my ruler back in the same position again. I'm actually going to freehand this a wee bit because I can use my eye on this second side to make it a bit easier for me. There, okay, that looks fairly even actually. Okay, so what we're then doing is, I'm going to use my magazine again at this point. Now, for this point, it's very good to use if you have a little nail brush or a comb. What we're going to try and do now is unravel this twisted spin on the yarn. You can do this a number of ways. If you've got a wee hard brush, I'm going to use this wee hard brush, and brush it. Hold on to the spine in the middle, put your fingers hard on it and brush your yarn, because what you're wanting to do is fluff it out, and you're wanting the spin, you're going to want to release it. Now another good way to do it is using the scissors or something pointy and just very slowly making sure that you're on a book and you're not, you know, scraping your mum's table. You are just putting the edge of something like a knitting needle or a blunt pair of scissors. These ones are blunt, make sure you don't use the sharp ones. And you are just drawing the edge through the yarn, which is untwisting the ply. So just take a bit of time to fluff out your yarn. On both sides. and give it a wee brush again. Haven't brushed this side. Oops, make sure your wee bit doesn't fall off. Don't brush it too hard that your bottom one comes off. Oh God, I nearly pulled the whole lot off there. Make sure you don't do that. Okay. In fact, your little plastic needle would be good for this as well. Just sort of gently pushing it through and then untwisting all that ply and fluffing up all those fibres to make it much softer and fluffier, just like a feather would be. Remember to do these bits at the bottom as well. So I actually found that the string was easier to fluff out because the last one that I did was just using everyday household string, and that actually was easier to fluff out than this one. So it's just going to take a little bit of time just to tease out those fibres, but it's obviously having a nice effect with the blue denim yarn, also giving us that nice boho effect. So just keep fluffing that out. Okay, so here are my two finished feathers. I've just trimmed them. All I've done really is just trimmed them. I trimmed them, this one more into a sort of love heart shape, and I just keep brushing it with your brush or your comb, whatever you've got to hand, and it really just does help to fluff out all the fibres and just make it look sort of gorgeous and fluffy. Okay, same with this one, the one that's in string. Just give it a good old brush and it makes it lovely and feather-like. Okay, so these are my two finished feathers. Now what I've decided to do is, with this blue one, I'm going to use this as a keyring, and I'm going to add this nice wooden bead on to the top of it. Okay, so I'm going to have to try and get it through. So I'm going to use my needle to pop it all the way through. And then I'm just going to add like a wee keyring onto the top. So I'm going to keep that separate from my car keys or my house keys, or from my school bag even. It's going to look nice draped on your school bag. There's a wee tufty bit at the side that I would just trim off. Every time you brush it, there's more tufty bits come out. So, what you're doing is you're kind of tailoring the shape quite a bit. Every time you brush it, you trim it again. Now, I am going to use my string one because it matches in really good with that colour. I'm actually going to use it for my jar, just to add a nice boho touch onto the jar. So I'm going to use just a tiny little bit of the t-shirt yarn that's left, and I'm just going to pop that through my feather, and I'm going to use it to disguise the sewing part. So I'm going to just thread it through the actual fabric like that, so that I can just tie this. I'm probably not going to bother putting it into a double knot because I think it looks quite casual as it is. I might push it up a little touch as well if I can from the bottom, just to make it go up a bit higher. We should still be able to do that. Yep, it's all gone up. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so there it is. It's gone higher up the jar, and it just means that I will flatten it out a little bit again. Pull that out from the top. Okay, there's my nice feather effect, and it just sort of falls into a nice feather shape at the side. And I'll trim that wee bottom bit there just because I've pushed it further up. Okay, so, and I will use my needle to just fan out those little threads that hadn't been done just push this properly into shape, and that just adds a nice little boho touch to the jar. And you can use that, pop your tea lights in, and that's going to make a nice gift for somebody. They're nice out in your garden, on your garden table, at night time. You know, if you're sitting out having a barbecue, it just makes a nice little boho addition. Hope you enjoyed that.